Over the past couple of months, I've taken a look at the maps within Star Wars Battlefront. We've covered Bespin platforms, the Rinvar maps, Kashyyyk's Islands, and last time, the Dune Sea, arguably the greatest showcase of Battlefront's map design. And I let you guys pick which map we cover next, which ended up being Geonosis Spire. And after thinking about it for a bit, I feel like, arguably more than any other map in this game, this is a Battlefront they had to get right. When first booting up the game, you see the iconic menu featuring holographic displays of many different planets. You also get a shot panning through one of two battlegrounds, those being Hoth for the original trilogy era, and Geonosis for the prequel era. The reason I feel these specific locations were chosen is due to the fact that they best encapsulate the war of their respective era of Star Wars. Large-scale ground combat is not something we saw much of in the Star Wars movies at this time. Outside of space battles, most of the action in the OG trilogy followed smaller engagements that our band of heroes found themselves in, or stealth operations which didn't see much large-scale fighting, the exception being Hoth, one of the most iconic battles in the series to this day. Similarly, Lucas's prequels honed in on smaller personal conflicts at the beginning. Phantom Menace saw local militias fight against essentially a militarized business. Now, I'm not trying to discredit these skirmishes, they are wildly entertaining and serve their purposes very well. But Naboo didn't recreate the large-scale war zone that Hoth was. But then came Attack of the Clones, where Geonosis served as the climax to all the film's plotlines. It was cool enough to see an army of Jedi fighting, but when those first gunships descended out of the sky, the Clone Wars began. I think this may be one of the most impactful moments in the franchise. We get the reveal of the clone troopers, and immediately you connect them with the stormtroopers who will one day take their place. You see their war engines, massive land tanks, and starships, something that can truly rival the Separatist droid army and their own war machines. And the remainder of the film is an all-out battle that set the tone of what the Clone Wars would be. This is the era of Star Wars that Battlefront released to. Revenge of the Sith was still a year away, and Geonosis was the standard of what a Star Wars Battlefront would look like moving forward. But why spend all this time analyzing the movie and not the game? Because I think this is the scale that Battlefront had to capture. This is what a Clone Wars battle was at the time. So I think it's important that this game's take on Geonosis had to capture that same spectacle within the limitations of a 2004 video game. As always, there are three main factors I look for which contribute to a great Battlefront map. It has to make you feel like you're in the middle of a massive battle, there should be multiple ways to engage in said battle, and does the map feel like a location from Star Wars? Now, these are certainly not the only criteria worth looking at. We've seen before how factors beyond these can contribute to a level just as much. But this is a good baseline, a starting point for a solid map. I will also be playing offline matches on both the original Xbox release of the game as well as the Classic Collection version. I've given my reasons for why in past videos. Now, even from selecting this map in instant action, one of the Spire's most unique features is notable. It is an era-locked level. Most maps in Battlefront give you the option of picking between the Galactic Civil War and the Clone Wars, but Geonosis is restrained to the Clone Wars only. We'll talk about why a little bit later on, but this means the only armies to consider are the Republic's clones and the Separatists' droids. After loading in and picking your side, you'll see that Geonosis Spire is massive. It's the largest map in the game, outside of maybe Hoth. You'll also find that, at first glance, the command post allocation is unbalanced, with the CIS holding significantly more area than the Republic. Geonosis has a whopping 8 command posts, those being the assembly area and the derelict in the south, 3 Techno-Union ships in the north, and in the center sits the titular spire, along with an east and west bunker serving as the front line defending the spire. The Republic also has 2 ATTEs, which serve as mobile command vehicles, bringing the total up to 10 possible spawning locations. However, a majority of these command posts have special properties which we will cover soon. Certain maps in this game are designed with specific types of battles in mind. Rinvar Harbor emulates a siege against a heavily fortified structure. Diegetic Island sees one army making a stand surrounded on all sides by their enemies. Geonosis has a similar attacker-defender dynamic, but it's far more subtle. This is the main base of the Separatist army, so naturally they have more defenses. However, the Republic, while not having much in the way of land, does start off with a massive amount of resources at their disposal. Spawning in at the assembly area as a clone trooper is an empowering feeling. You might be going into battle outnumbered and at a disadvantage, but you are surrounded by tools that can change the tide of this fight quickly. You have 2 gunships and 2 ATTEs, not to mention the command center resolutely positioned in the middle. Also, seeing your brethren begin to rush out of this area hypes you up for battle. Since nearly all of your allies start here, it gives the illusion of a much larger army. The Separatists get a similar feeling when spawning at the Techno-Union ships. Although due to the multiple other posts they could spawn at, the feeling isn't quite on the same level. But anytime you start moving as a unified force in these games always fills me with anticipation for the coming clash. All of these elements first come together in the plains between the derelict and the 2 bunkers. It comes pretty close to recreating the feeling of the movie. Numerous vehicles dwarfing the infantry troops, who are not only trying to fight each other, but also pelt the tanks with whatever damage they can. It's a hail of blaster fire all around you, but there's also a much higher chance of a pilot aiming his cannons at you and blasting you away before you even realize what's going on. It becomes a hectic environment, requiring quick movement and good aim to stay alive long enough to make a difference. Just about every unit can effectively fight here. Standard infantry and special units like the Droideka and Jet Trooper can fight well. Marksmen have a wide open field with little cover, meaning they can engage at good distances. Pilots have access to many different vehicles, and heavies can attack that said armor. Similar to the Dune Sea, it's a battlefield that doesn't lend itself to one particular class. Even Droidekas, historically a tougher unit to kill, can get overwhelmed very easily, balancing out the high damage output they are capable of. In addition to this, Republic forces have another factor to consider: the Geonosians. Just like in the film, the bug-like natives assist the droid army, as they are one of the main manufacturers of the CIS. They are the local faction for this map, capable of short bursts of flight. When talking about third factions before, I've mentioned how they give a significant advantage to whomever they side with. And while that is the case here, the Geonosians are probably one of the weakest armies in the game. They have low health, and their sonic blasters, though having a decent fire rate, have low damage and low range. Their biggest strength is their mobility, as a flying target is harder to hit. But only a couple bolts is all it's going to take to get them out of the fight. Now, while they certainly should not be underestimated, they are one of the easiest third factions to manage. But the real MVPs of this map are the various vehicles. We've seen other maps utilize them in different ways, but you can tell this was a Battlefront designed with them in mind. Before even getting into how they play, their visual presence alone is impressive. Usually a map only includes one command vehicle, if any. This one has 2. Seeing both ATTEs gives a sense of scale not normally felt on other maps. And they aren't the only metal behemoths present. The droids gain access to the Hailfire droid and the Spider Walker. One of each spawn at the east and west bunkers. Though not as sturdy as the ATTEs, the Spider Walker dwarfs it in stature and is capable of hitting just as hard. Its primary fire is a burst laser, dealing high damage but requiring a great deal of accuracy. While able to instantly kill an infantry unit, these small targets are hard to hit consistently. Its true intended target are enemy vehicles. This laser melts through the hull of a walker or gunship. By focusing your fire, you could easily bring down your enemy's firepower. And for the basic units, your secondary fire is a standard blaster cannon, far more efficient at mopping up what's left when that ATTE falls. The Hailfire droid is smaller and quicker. Armed with 2 massive missile pods, they too are effective against command vehicles, though a less direct approach is required. Hit and run is the name of the game, as a few concussive cannon blasts will blow apart your ride. Although they are good against infantry too, not necessarily with their missiles, which fly wildly if the target isn't nearby, but rather by running them over. If you see a squad of clones in an open area, it's typically better to just turn them into vehicular manslaughter statistics. Sometimes with the terrain and gaps under your droid, it may cause you to miss a few, but more often than not, you will see your score counter tick up with every drive-by. This makes the Spire a dangerous place to be a frontline soldier, but it's not an impossible task. Obviously, a rocket launcher can bring an end to an enemy's joyride pretty quickly, but a vehicle can't claim ground, only clear it. As mentioned before, a majority of the fighting occurs in this triangle between these 3 command posts, and as such, they are the most transitory on the map. In addition to the assembly area, the Republic gets the Derelict. This is the hollowed out ruins of a Techno-Union ship like the one seen in the back of the map. The command post sits inside the ship, providing some cover from the heavier armaments present. It changes hands a lot, as it is the first command post the Separatists will attack. But they can lose it just as quickly as they can gain it due to the dense fighting outside. I do find the name Derelict a bit strange, seeing as something derelict has been abandoned and gone into disrepair from lack of upkeep. Meanwhile, this seems like a pretty fresh crash site. It's a ruin brought about by recent fighting, not negligence. Still, it is not necessarily an inappropriate use of the word, just something the old language arts teacher in me notices. On the Separatist front are the east and west bunkers. Being virtually the same command post on opposite sides of the Spire, they are the first line of defense against the clones. Whereas most of the map is open with very little cover, the bunkers are built from the rocky outcroppings on the planet. The command post sits on a raised platform surrounded by stalagmites which offer you cover. You will need to climb a ramp in the back to get up to this post, requiring a bit more survivability to reach than just taking a direct approach. Although I'm pretty sure they can be captured at the foot of the bunker if you're in the right position. An LR-1K sonic cannon also sits here, theoretically providing defense, but I'm gonna be honest, these just might be the worst turrets in the game. The sonic cannon has an incredibly short range and a projectile that feels slow. While these can be found all over the map, I would not put much stock in their usefulness. These 3 command posts are the hottest areas of battle, but they only serve as a foreground to the titular spire of this map. Rising out of the dust, this monolith is the most centralized location here on Geonosis. It is impossible to avoid and too tempting a target to never go after. In order to reach the spire, you must first climb up the side of this hill. Along the top are rows of sonic cannons serving as ramparts in defense, although not particularly effective ones. Several cave entrances lead inside the spire, where you see one of the most memorable locations in this game. At its center is a large holographic table giving a tactical readout of the battle below. It shows the Techno-Union ships as well as a few LAATs flying around. If I'm being completely honest though, I think this room gets by on its cool factor alone. For being so central, it is incredibly easy to capture. Every time I came in here, it was never defended save 1, maybe 2 droids, and the occasional one that would wander in from outside. Because that's another thing, spawning at the spire will sometimes place you outside on the rampart area. Not a lot will realistically happen here, but it's still such an iconic set piece, and it is still a valuable command post to own since it gives you ease of access to any other area of the map. And well, you just feel cool taking it as a clone trooper. The Separatist command center is now under your control. I remember as a child I would pretend to sneak in here, going prone and imagining I was part of an elite infiltration team. The one interesting thing the Spire does have is a hangar, which brings me to the next talking point, the starfighters. Just like the ground vehicles, air vehicles play a role in the combat loop and the visual element of this map. Earlier, we saw how the clones have access to the LAAT gunship on this map. And just like the walkers, they get not one but two of these vehicles, which is a great boon considering how effective these ships are. In past videos, I've talked about the strengths of certain vehicle classes, and I think that now as I've returned to this game, the LAAT gunship, and arguably by extension the droid's dropship, might just be the single most powerful vehicle in this game. Unlike most other starfighters, the gunship is not in perpetual motion. It can stop, float, you can strafe with it. You can aim in any which way and move in any direction. All while equipped with a nice set of blaster cannons which can eviscerate ground units. This alone makes it a great combat choice, as very few dangers are in the sky. Particularly if you choose the pilot with his passive vehicle repair. The gunship also hosts other seats, including a co-pilot and two side-mounted laser guns. And of course, the gunship's primary use was shuttling units to the battle, as seen in the films. So there are seats serving only as unit space, transporting extra soldiers. And if you choose to sit in one of these seats, you get an awesome animation of your clone in the transport area. This is also where one of my most popular gameplay clips comes from. And while I'm waiting for my ammo to reload, I can just cycle to the different positions on this gunship and do this, and then at the end of it all, just get like the hardest album cover of all time. If you're interested, that was from my historical campaign series, where I played through each campaign level in this game. I'll link the SuperCut video in the description below. But you can utilize this transport feature to your advantage. Somewhat. By using vehicle squad commands, you can fill up your gunship, fly to whatever location you wish, and land, commanding your passengers to get off. This allows for a mild level of troop management, as you can shuttle your forces to the locations you want. However, they are still Battlefront AI, so don't expect too much from them after all floating. And speaking of, anytime you swap away from the cockpit and let one of your allies fly, you're basically guaranteed to crash. At least you and Buddy Holly are going to have something to talk about in the afterlife. On the Separatist side, you will not have the Vulture droid or the dropship found on other starfighter maps, but rather the Geonosis starfighter. Two of these spawn in a hangar connected to the Spire. They are similar to the standard starfighter, being quick and maneuverable to contrast the gunship's powerful but slower frame. They are another weapon built for hit-and-run style attacks. They have a wide array of targets to choose from. You can go for the ATTEs, the gunships, or the soldiers on the ground. You'll need a few passes to damage bigger targets like the command walkers, but over time it will wear them down. The gunships are also easy to hit with their movement speed, but again your damage is relatively low, so it takes some work. However, there is one surefire way to take them out. Something I want to make note of real quick. When doing a bit of research for this video, I saw where the Battlefront wiki page claims that the Geonosis starfighter has different damage values depending on what version of the game you play. Allegedly, the PS2 version has the highest damage, so can effectively take down vehicles, but the PC version has a substantially weaker shot. Now, I don't have immediate access to the PS2 version of the game, but I did try the test between the two versions I had. But I didn't notice a notable difference in the damage against infantry, walkers, and ships. I did notice that clones could survive a single shot from your fighter at full health, but that's negated by the fact that you will likely shoot multiple times. I will say, I do think the Geonosis fighter requires a slight bit more accuracy due to only firing one single bolt, whereas most starfighters shoot from two cannons, meaning your target area is a little bit smaller than your standard starfighter. While we've covered a lot already, there is one last element of this map worth talking about. When looking at the map, the assembly area and the Techno-Union command post will appear a little different than the others. You will also not see the typical holographic command post display. This is because the structures themselves are the command post. A handful of maps feature iconic locations as spawn points, and instead of being captured, they can be destroyed, removed from the game entirely. Most levels only have one, if any, but Geonosis has 4. Beyond the Spire itself, the Techno-Union ships situated to the north are synonymous with this map, mainly because you are constantly hearing about them. Your faction's narrator will order you to either destroy or defend these structures, depending on your side. While at least theoretically possible with infantry units, the only way you're going to reliably bring these behemoths down is with the appropriate amount of firepower. Growing up, my preferred method was the gunship. It comes equipped with missiles, lasers, and it is how the Techno-Union ships were brought down in the movies. Although you will exhaust your high-damaging rockets before the ship lands. Thankfully, there is a solution. While everyone knows about the medic and ammo droids scattered throughout levels, Battlefront 1 is home to a third droid, that being the repair droid. These guys are scattered all throughout maps hosting vehicles because they repair and resupply. So if you run out of missiles, land your gunship near one and you will soon receive a fresh supply. Now while this is all fine and dandy, it is not the most efficient way to take down these ships, but that is where the ATTE comes in. These juggernauts pack serious firepower, so once they are in range of a Techno-Union dropship, it will not be a very long fight. In addition to this, the Walker's command vehicle capabilities means that they provide another Republic spawn point, giving the clones a great deal of versatility in where they start. So if the ATTE is the better option, why did I say the gunship was my preferred method? Honestly, I've been asking myself the same question. It is a night and day difference in their levels of effectiveness. I will say, as a child, I remembered not really having the patience for the walkers due to their slow walking speed. I guess I just fell into my ways of taking a gunship and never looked back. But of course, their speed is a good balance, as that gives the Separatists plenty of time to disable the walkers before ever reaching their target. On the opposite end of the battle is the Republic's equivalent, the assembly area. Instead of 3 structures, the clones only have 1. This command center, where we see Yoda and Pons command the battle from. At least I'm pretty sure this is Commander Pons. One of these yellow clones was retroactively made to be Pons, Mace Windu's commander during the first 2 seasons of the Clone Wars. There's your little free piece of Star Wars trivia for the day. The command center is the hub around which all of the Republic's vehicles spawn. It too can be destroyed, although I've only seen this occur naturally on a few occasions, which is funny considering the droids typically will reach the assembly area long before the clones reach the Techno-Union. But destroying this does offer a big advantage, as it reduces the Republic's already limited spawn points. Now normally, I don't dedicate a section of these videos to discussing hard mode unless I notice something very particular while playing on a map. I mean, what am I supposed to say? I noticed it was harder playing on hard mode. If there's nothing interesting to say, I'm just going to skip over it. However, the Spire has 2 unique factors worth discussing. First off, you've probably guessed this if you haven't experienced it firsthand, but the Separatists definitely have the upper hand on this map. Already one of the strongest factions, they are supported by local Geonosian forces and control over half the map, even if 3 of these posts can be taken out. As always, third factions automatically bolster numbers, and it means that some of your kills as a clone may not even contribute towards diminishing the enemy unit count. But that is not where the story ends. I would like to direct your attention to one particular hard mode match I played. I had been in my gunship basically the whole match trying to shoot down droids from above. But even while doing this, I found my team losing by over 40 units and defeat seeming inevitable. However, Since I was still in the sky, I was still alive and the last unit ticket on my team. And since the ATTEs and assembly area had not been destroyed, the enemy didn't technically own every command post. So I stayed in the sky and systematically wiped out the remaining enemy team. It got to a point where I found more Geonosians than I did droids, and I had to actively search for my last few opponents. And once I found them, I won the match with a final KD ratio of 170 kills and 0 deaths. So while this map is unbalanced in the droid's favor, it essentially rebalances itself if you're willing to commit to this playstyle. I wouldn't necessarily call this an unintended way to play, but it is certainly an unorthodox method. But even outside of hard mode, there are maps that tend to lean more heavily on one side. And while Geonosis is one of them, even on a normal difficulty, just by diligently capturing command posts, destroying Techno-Union ships, and properly utilizing the vehicles at my disposal, I managed to beat the Separatists with that advantage. It took effort, and it didn't always result in a victory, but it felt far more fair and reasonable as a challenge. Balancing issues and faction favoritism on certain levels has always been this game's biggest issue in my opinion, but it's an issue that can be overcome in most instances. So this accidentally became the most balanced hard difficulty map I've done in this series so far. But the reason for it was the fact that both teams had unbalanced elements at play. As always, I want to talk about what this map is diegetically, which is very easy to do in this map's case. In a broad sense, it's just a shrunk-down version of the Battle of Geonosis, a microcosm of a larger battle, but the Spire lets us know exactly where on the planet this is, as this control room is the same one we see Count Dooku and the Separatist leadership in during the movie. Most likely, this is after their personal evacuations. This is at the end of the larger battle, as the droids are making one last stand to let the CIS leadership and Techno-Union ships escape to fight in future battles of the upcoming war. Before concluding, let's talk about some trivia and fun facts about this map. First, a few details about the Spire. The 2 Geonosian starfighters present are likely a reference to the 2 ships that escorted Dooku as he fled the Spire, giving more credence to this being the same location from the film. Now this is more of a lack of a cool feature, but since the command room displays the 3 Techno-Union ships, I was curious if they would be removed from the hologram after being destroyed. But it appears that they don't, and all 3 ships remain regardless of their presence on the map. In a similar vein, I have a vague memory as a child seeing the hologram turn into the Death Star schematics, but this also doesn't actually occur. When firing your gunship's missiles, they lock onto the area right above the fuel pods of the Techno-Union ships. This is the same area that was stated to be its weak point in Attack of the Clones. This is the only map in the game where you can find the Hailfire droid, meaning that it technically is a map-exclusive vehicle. This map has the most command posts out of any level in both of the original games, sporting 8 with 2 command walkers, meaning a total of 10. This large number is offset by the fact that 4, well, technically 6, of these command posts can be destroyed. The beta elements of this game is something I'm still trying to figure out how to approach. Now, I'll likely make a video looking at all the beta maps at some point, but for now let's briefly talk about it. You can see that the original vision for this level was even larger. Instead of the Spire we got, this map would consist of 7 Techno-Union ships, 3 ATTEs, the assembly area, and a single actual command post, spawning 3 LAAT gunships. The Spire building still would have been present, but the command post sits in the middle of the display table, and this element can actually still be seen when selecting the level. In that same vein, on the instant action select screen, this table-sitting command post actually displays the Hutt's logo rather than the Separatists. It appears that Geonosis was planned to be even bigger still. As a cut vehicle from this game is the SPHAT, a weapon we saw prominently on Geonosis used to bring down the Trade Federation command hulls. It was likely considered for inclusion due to its appearance in Pandemic's previous Star Wars game, The Clone Wars, so the asset was on hand. While not specific to Geonosis, most people know that a sixth playable class was cut from this game. For the CIS, it was the Tactical Droid, who would look like a basic B-1 unit, but come equipped with a sonic blaster. The local Geonosians also don't have wings while on the ground for some reason, and even when in flight, I sometimes noticed the wings were absent. And lastly, this was one of the few planets to both return in Battlefront 2, but have an entirely different map. Now, that will get its own video one day, but I am willing to bet that it is universally considered to be an inferior map, which transitions us back to what made this original version better. I'm sure many of you can guess what the Spire's biggest strength is. Despite the hardware and limits of this game, the Battle of Geonosis feels just as large as it does in the movies. I've mentioned this before, but I used to teach theater, and I still do a lot of acting. So the way that some of these maps manage to create a spectacle, especially with the limitations of the time, fascinates me to no end. Spire is dynamic, with multiple moving pieces that come together. You've been seeing it here in the footage, but when you play this map, everything aligns to give you an authentic Star Wars battlefield. I think the vehicles might play the biggest part in this. Watching massive war machines rove, crush any target in their wake as they tower over the ground forces. Seeing a Geonosian starfighter zip by overhead, or a gunship moving troops around. I didn't mention it before, but even the comm players will land the gunship at various points, to either heal at a repair droid or drop off reinforcements. Does it affect the actual battle? No. But this simple animation makes the fight feel alive, like it's a war that exists beyond you. The battle would happen even if you weren't there. That's a level of immersion not found in every game, and it's not common on other maps in this game either. Even the skybox contributes to this feeling. I don't always mention that part of the design, but it's still a major aspect of the level. Here you can see Republic Acclimator cruisers overhead. Alongside them are several other gunships and vulture droids. You can even make out the occasional hard-sell Techno-Union ship managing to escape. And even in the background, you can spot a Trade Federation Lucrehulk core, most likely the ultimate target for this clone battalion. The skybox is virtually the same between the console and Classic Collection / PC versions, save for being a sharper image. Historically speaking, I've preferred the older versions of skyboxes, but here the low quality severely impacts the visuals. Things just get a bit too muddy and out of focus, especially with some of the distant rock spires, whereas the updated one is just picture perfect. The only critique I could say is it might be a little too crisp, with the older resolution more accurately depicting obscurement caused by the swirling dust of the battle. It's easy to see how such an iconic location managed to be recreated in such a masterful way. While I always enjoyed this map, returning to it for this video may have made it one of my new favorites. The way it makes you feel cannot be understated. But feelings only get you so far, and the battle and gameplay live up to the precedent set by the films. It's so uniquely Clone Wars. I had planned to talk about a hypothetical galactic civil war version of this level, but well, first off, this video is already long enough as is. But even still, everything is so tailored to the prequel era, I don't think it would translate as well, putting in rebels and stormtroopers and AT-ATs here. Besides, they've got Hoth, and that's a discussion for another day. Geonosis Spire manages to not only harbor the best elements of a Battlefront map, but it creates a phenomenal and unique spectacle while doing so. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. What do you think of Geonosis Spire? Is it one of your favorite maps? Do you think there's some element about it I forgot to mention? If you enjoyed this video, like I said before, I've been going through all the maps within this game, and I've already covered a decent amount of them. I'll link a playlist in the description below, but like I said, I've already looked at Bespin Platforms, Rinvar, the Kashyyyk Islands, and then Tatooine Dune Sea. I also had some other videos on the channel if you're interested in checking those out as well. I actually recently celebrated the 4-year anniversary of this YouTube channel, and for that I actually made a top 10 video on some of my favorite video games I've played over the past few years. If that sounds like something you're interested in watching, I'll link it in the description below too. And then of course I also just play games to have fun and have a good time, kind of like that clip from the Battlefront historical campaign video from earlier. I'll link that video and maybe some of the other supercuts as well. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.